The restaurant hummed softly with the sound of clinking glasses, gentle music, and the comforting scent of freshly baked bread. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, scattering golden reflections across the crisp, white tablecloths. It was just another weekday afternoon. Ordinary for most, but for Anna Müller, it felt like yet another quiet test in a life full of unseen battles. She straightened her apron, wiped her trembling hands on it, and summoned a polite smile before walking toward a table that would soon change everything. Not only for her, but for everyone who witnessed what was about to happen. If you believe that kindness, respect, and second chances can truly transform lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Stories like this remind us what it really means to be human. Anna had been working double shifts for weeks at l'Amazon, a high-end restaurant where the wealthy came to flaunt their fortunes, and the staff tried their best to disappear behind polite smiles. Her mother's medical bills were stacking up, and her younger brother's tuition was overdue. Yet, she rarely complained, even when exhaustion blurred her vision or her aching feet begged for rest. She carried herself with a quiet grace, the kind that comes only from those who have endured real hardship. That afternoon, a group of businessmen entered the restaurant, their presence confident and commanding, as though the air itself bent to their importance. Among them was Carl Schneider, a billionaire investor with a reputation for ruthless deals and a sharper tongue than most could bear. His entrance drew subtle glances from nearby tables. Power has a way of shrinking everything around it. He wore a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. He liked being noticed, admired, even feared. Anna noticed him too, but only because it was her job. Carrying their drinks with steady hands, she approached the table and instantly felt their gaze. The kind that measures worth by the fabric of a uniform. Leaning back in his chair, Carl began speaking in fluent German to his companions, assuming no one else could understand. His voice dripped with arrogance as he mocked the waitress's trembling hands and made cruel remarks about how poor people always look clumsy when they try to act refined. Laughter rippled through the table. Cold, cutting, and loud enough for Anna to hear. She froze, heart pounding. She understood every word. After all, she wasn't just a waitress. She was once a language student with dreams of becoming a translator. But dreams don't always survive reality. After her father's death, she had left university to support her family. For a moment, she wanted to pretend she hadn't heard him, to let it pass. But something deep within her, a quiet, unshakable strength, refused to stay silent. Setting the tray down gently, Anna took a steady breath and turned toward Carl. Then, in flawless German, she spoke, calm, composed, and resolute. Her words were measured, her voice steady, carrying the kind of quiet authority that comes from having nothing left to lose. She told him that respect doesn't come from wealth, and intelligence isn't born from privilege. She reminded him that the language he used to humiliate others was one she had once loved deeply. Not to show off, but to connect. The laughter died immediately. The room seemed to hold its breath. Carl's smirk faded, replaced by uncertainty. His companions shifted uncomfortably, their earlier bravado slipping into silence. Anna didn't raise her voice or demand pity. She simply stood her ground, calm, proud, dignified. Then she turned and walked away, leaving a billionaire staring at his reflection in a glass of wine. For the rest of the meal, Carl said little. The same men who had laughed minutes earlier now avoided his eyes. Something in Anna's words had pierced deeper than she could have imagined. When the time came to pay, Carl requested to speak with the manager. Everyone assumed he'd file a complaint or demand that Anna be fired. Her stomach knotted as the manager called her over. She braced herself for humiliation. But when Carl stood up, his expression had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something unexpectedly human. He apologized, first in German, then in English. The restaurant fell silent, stunned at the sight of a billionaire apologizing to a waitress. He admitted he had judged her unfairly, that he'd forgotten what true respect meant. Then, without another word, he left a generous tip. Not as penance, but as gratitude, and quietly exited the restaurant. Anna didn't cry, though her chest ached with emotion. She simply exhaled, feeling a fragile sense of relief. She had spoken not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. Weeks passed, and life went on. Then, one morning, the restaurant received a letter addressed to Anna. It was from Carl Schneider. Inside, he wrote that their encounter had changed him, made him reflect on his life, his behavior, and even the culture of his company. He confessed that he too had grown up poor, something he had buried beneath layers of ego and wealth. He admitted he had lost touch with humility and empathy, the very traits that once guided him. He thanked Anna for reminding him of who he used to be before success hardened his heart. Enclosed with the letter was a scholarship form and sponsorship offer. A fund he had established in Anna's name to help underprivileged students continue their education. He wanted her to be its very first recipient. Tears welled in her eyes as she read the letter. Her quiet act of courage had not only defended her dignity, it had rekindled humanity in someone else. Anna accepted the scholarship, returned to university, and eventually fulfilled her dream of becoming a professional translator. Years later, she stood on a stage as a guest speaker at a university event about resilience and kindness. Looking out at the sea of young faces, she remembered that afternoon. The sunlight, the laughter, the silence that followed. She told the audience, "Kindness is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in gentleness. Sometimes, standing up with grace can soften even the hardest of hearts." If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of kindness, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. The world needs more reminders that compassion still matters. And before you go, tell us, what would you have done in Anna's place? Would you have stayed silent or spoken your truth as she did? As the sun dipped low that day, casting golden light over empty tables, Anna lingered a moment longer, finishing her closing duties. But something inside her had changed forever. She was no longer just a waitress. She was proof that dignity cannot be bought, that words can heal, and that one moment of courage can echo through another person's life, like sunlight breaking through a storm. And somewhere, high above the city in a gleaming glass tower, a billionaire sat by his window, holding a letter with her name on it, and whispered a quiet thank you to the girl who reminded him that wealth means nothing without heart.